Welcome to another episode of Three's a Crowd. I'm Preston Vargas riding solo today with Eli Atwood out on vacation. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone who has liked and subscribed to this channel. We've reached our goal of 50 subscribers by Thanksgiving. Couldn't do it without you. Also, the college volleyball bracket is out now, and they will lock at Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So, link to that, our Three's a Crowd group is in the description below, alongside our other college football playoff challenges. Make sure to join those as bowl season is around the corner. Let's get to today's episode. The Steelers lost to the Bills in a blowout at home. Obviously, Mike Tomlin under fire from the fans. And right now, let me check the standings. Pittsburgh currently sits on the outside of the playoffs looking in, and they are tied with the Baltimore Ravens at 6-6 for the AFC North. Now the two teams play each other next Sunday at 1 o'clock. I think I think this will be a definitely a good one because the Ravens, even though they lost, they're still in it. But let's take a look. Let's talk about the Steelers right now. Steelers are uh, playing well to say the least. Let me check their streak. They've lost two straight. I mean, you lost to the Bears, you lost to the Buffalo Bills, which the Bills are a good team. Don't get me wrong there, but I think the Bills they need to, or I'm sorry, the Steelers they got to get some wins, especially at Baltimore, and then going to you got Miami on your schedule, then you got a tough one at Detroit before playing the Browns, then the Ravens to end the season. And the pressure's getting to Mike Tomlin. I mean, you've heard from the fans, there were audible fire Tomlin chants. And Tomlin's a great coach, in my opinion, but he's been there 19 years. And I get the fans' frustrations, but with not winning a playoff game in nearly a decade, but what are you gonna do, in my opinion? I think that if I were a betting man, I would say Mike Tomlin stays another season. And I don't know if they win the AFC North. The Ravens schedule looks a little more difficult to the season. So if I were a betting man, I would say the Pittsburgh Steelers would win the AFC North. Now, let's get into Lane Kiffin. Reports saying he's going to LSU. He officially accepted the offer yesterday after mulling it from this weekend. And now we got the news yesterday during the NFL slate that it is official that Lane Kiffin's been hired to replace Brian Kelly at LSU. Now I gotta say this. What is he doing? I mean, you have a stable situation at Ole Miss where the fans loved you, and now you threw it away to go to a rival school like LSU. This is absurd, in my opinion. You left a comfortable situation where you were winning and building something great in Ole Miss, who's in the SEC, and you want to go to a job that you think is better. I'm sorry, in my opinion, it's not a better job. It's the lateral move, in my opinion. Maybe slightly a downgrade. And yes, you could say that Ole Miss hasn't won anything since the 60s, and LSU won recently. But Ole Miss, I think, was a good national title contender this year. And you're growing that program into the prestige that it should be at, in my opinion. And this team is I'm going to say that they're not going to win the national title this year. I don't know how good Peter Golding is, but Ole Miss is a great program. And I think this is an indictment on the college football calendar as a whole. In no other major sport where you have coaches leaving in the middle of the season and coaches are getting fired in October, so you get a head start on this. It's just absurd at this point. I can speak from experience. with my team, the UCF Knights. 2017, we went uh 13 and 0, won the American Athletic Conference, beat Auburn in the title game. But in between all that, as the conference championship was going on against Memphis back in 2017, there were reports that Scott Frost had accepted the job at the head coach at Nebraska while we were playing and trying to win a conference title. But he stays around and coaches the team through the Peach Bowl. This goes to say, I think coaches should finish out their contracts, in my opinion. I mean, why? I don't know how long he was there for. Also, this is a indictment on all the coaches that are fired. Let me be honest, Brian Kelly should have never been fired from LSU. I think it was too soon after. I mean, he had an embarrassing loss at home to A&M, but A&M's a good program. The hot seat's just too much of college football right now. And I think the calendar needs to be fixed. What they need to do, move signing day back to February where it used to be, because signing day is now right before bowl season, right before winter break, instead of where it used to be in February. Move it back there, and then coaches can finish out the season, decide what to do after. Transfer portal should be open the day after the national title game. Coaching interviews should be taking place the day after the national championship game. It's not that hard. And yes, you have the situation where you could where you have to enroll by a certain date, but you can enroll I mean, for spring practice, you can enroll in the summer. And that goes to another thing with spring practice. Now, I know this is going to be controversial to some, but I think that spring practice is, I think they should cancel spring practice, spring games, in my opinion. I mean, if you're having players transfer in and out, you can't really build a team that way. And then move that game it's like a practice game in the summer. Move it to August 1st or something, like weeks before the season, and have a summer game instead of a spring game. It just makes more sense to do it that way because you get your guys into the summer, and then you can build a team that way and get rid of the whole spring transfer window stuff and get rid of that. Anyway, I feel bad for the Ole Miss fans and players who have to go try to win a national championship under these distractions. And also, I think Ole Miss was right to not let Lane Kiffin coach them in the playoffs because you'd have a situation where you're recruiting people on the sideline. It's way different than what I mentioned before with Scott Frost staying with the UCF through the playoffs because back then you didn't have a transfer portal. I mean, you had people transfer, but not like it wasn't how it is today in the college football landscape. You weren't actively recruiting through the transfer portal as much. So yeah, today's day and age where Lane Kiffin could just recruit players during the playoffs, I think it was right for Ole Miss, especially to an SEC rival like LSU. This is a big, this is a small rivalry. It's pretty big, I would say. And then moving on to the NFL, the Los Angeles Rams took on the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte, and the Rams ended up losing that game by a score of 31 to 28. Bryce Young, he had 206 yards passing, three touchdowns, no picks. Matthew Stafford, 243 yards, two touchdowns, two picks. Now the interceptions for Stafford were the first since September, so it's been a while since he's thrown any interception. He had two yesterday, and for me, that's a It's just a bad game for Stafford, not really a bad sign. Kyron Williams was kept quiet even though he scored a touchdown, only 72 yards rushing. Blake Corum actually had more rushing yards at 81. Well, else he had Devontae Adams, two touchdown receptions. Nakua made an amazing catch, one of his six receptions for 72 yards. But I want to look at Carolina. Uh, Bryce Young, he started to play well. He's got the Panthers going in the right direction. They're 7-6 now. Even though they didn't win against the Niners, they beat the Falcons in overtime, and which was a big win for them on the road. The Panthers, they got their bye week. One of the last teams to have a bye week. I didn't know they had bias this late. Before you got to play Tampa twice, and that's going to decide the NFC South, in my opinion. You got New Orleans on the road, then Seattle at home. I think Seattle's a beatable team for the Carolina Panthers, but yeah, I think Bryce Young started to turn into something. He had 200 yards passing. Not the best game, but not that 400-yard game that he had against Atlanta. But he started to get uh, a good rapport with Tedero McMillan. Even though he had one catch yesterday, it was a big one, 43 yards for the touchdown, which basically sealed the game for the Carolina Panthers. Or not sealed. They took the lead. The fourth down play for Bryce Young going for it that really sealed the game. But that play took the lead in the fourth quarter, and that all sets up this. The Rams are not the one seed anymore. You know who the one seed is? This team right here, the Chicago Bears, the number one seed in the NFC. While we beat the Philadelphia Eagles, not beat them, dominated them 24 to 15. What a win for the Bears. The rushing yards, let me pull this up. 281 rushing yards. Kyle Benungai, DeAndre Swift, both over 100 yards. First time the Bears have had two 100-yard rushers since 1985. Think about that. I mean, Caleb Williams, he had 154 yards, one touchdown, and that one pick on the screen that was intercepted by Jordan Davis. Other than that, solid effort. And that touchdown pass to Cole Kmet to basically put the dagger on the game. I think this shows the Bears could beat anyone in the league. And this is a good football team. They're not frauds. I think they're real contenders in the NFC this year. I'm not saying they're gonna go to the Super Bowl yet, but we're looking pretty good. Final five games, we play the Packers twice, with the Browns sandwiched in between the Packer game. Then we got San Francisco on the road before ending with Detroit, which we'll get to Detroit in our Thanksgiving games recap. But I think the Bears are probably going to win the NFC North, in my opinion. I'll check the standings now with the playoff percentages. So right now, according to CBS Sports, the Bears are projected to, in terms of percentages, second in the division behind the Green Bay Packers. It's really a two-team race between the Bears and Packers, which is why this Sunday is a very big game for both teams. And that's why they flexed it into the 425 slot. That's going to be a huge one. I think. Let me check the spread on that one because I think the spread hasn't been released yet, which I'm surprised. But in terms of the money line, Green Bay minus 306. I think the Bears win this one. Not being biased, they win this one. Like I think it's going to be 33 to 17, one of those type of games. The Bears offense, I think, could get rolling against this Green Bay defense. We pound the rock, and Caleb Williams doesn't have to be the hero. That's what we saw against Philadelphia. if Caleb Williams could be the hero if we need him to be, but just pound the rock and the Bears lead the league in takeaways. Deshaun Wright leads the NFL with 8 takeaways. And even though Jordan Love has 3 picks, he's known to throw a few in big moments. So I think we get at least one interception off of Jordan Love in the game against the Packers. And speaking of the Packers, let's go to the Thanksgiving slate. It was a good Thanksgiving for the Green Bay Packers. They won at Detroit 31-24. Jordan Love is an MVP quarterback on Thanksgiving. He had 234 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And Dontavian Wicks coming out of nowhere to have 2 touchdown receptions. I mean, if we can, the Packers are pretty much injured. They don't have Tucker Kraft anymore. And this is a solid performance by them. Uh, Detroit had opportunities to win this game. Jared Goff, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns. But in terms of sacks, Micah Parsons on the Packers defense, he had 2.5 sacks. So pretty solid outing for him. But I'll talk about Detroit here because they're 7-5. I think it looks bleak for them, unfortunately. What they have to do is beat the Cowboys. And that's going to be a tough game at home. It's winnable because they're at home. Then they go on to play the Rams, Steelers, and then play the Vikings on the road on Christmas, which doesn't look like the game that we thought it would be on Christmas before ending at Chicago. They got a Detroit has a tough schedule ahead of them. In terms of the standings right now, they're on the outside looking at the playoffs. According to the playoff percentages, they have a not 60, 36% chance to make it. 36, and some people were saying that this was the best team in the NFL just 3 weeks ago. And now we're talking about if they can even make the playoffs. They got the overtime win against the Giants. And let's not forget they were down 10 in that one, losing to the Eagles on the road. Now they hope this is just a speed bump. They can turn things around, but it's going to be tough for them. Speaking of teams that might miss the playoffs, the Kansas City Chiefs losing 28-31 to the Dallas Cowboys. So Rashee Rice had a decent performance for the Chiefs. 2 touchdown receptions on 92 yards. Uh, CeeDee Lamb had a touchdown reception, 112 yards. Dak Prescott, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. And Patrick Mahomes, solid outing. Uh, uh, solid outing yesterday. I mean, on Thanksgiving. 261 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. But let me talk about the Chiefs for a second. They're currently third in the AFC West. They're 4 games out with Denver's win last night at Washington. Folks, the Chiefs aren't going to the playoffs. I'm sorry, they're not going to win the division. They need a monumental Denver collapse to win the division before facing them on Christmas Day. I don't see Denver collapsing. They've won 9 straight games to go to 10-2. So, and they got the Broncos, they got the Raiders, Packers at home, the Jacksonville at home for going to Kansas City and ending with the Chargers. In my opinion, I think they win 4 of their last 5. I think that the Broncos pretty much going to win that division, and the Chargers are 2 games out. Even though they beat the Raiders in convincing fashion, and the Chargers they got a tough schedule. They got the Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Texans, and Broncos. I think that's the hardest schedule in the NFL in the last 5 weeks of the season. That's going to be a gauntlet for them. And then let me talk about the Dallas Cowboys for a second. So the Cowboys, even though they started off, they didn't have a good start to the season. But then after the Cardinals game where they lost, and then they sadly lost Marshawn Nealon tragically during their bye week. They come out to play the Raiders. Everyone thought the Raiders were a team that they should beat up on, and they did. But then you come into the Eagles game, down 21 nothing. You claw your way back and win on a game-winning field goal, 24-21. So you beat the defending Super Bowl champions at home, and then you beat the Super Bowl runner-ups the previous year on Thanksgiving on a short week, 31-28. So the Cowboys, they have a winning record now at 6-5, 6-5-1. So they're scheduled down the stretch. If they could beat Detroit on Thursday Night Football, I think they could win out because you play the Vikings at home, Chargers at home, who are collapsing at the moment. Even though the Chargers won, I can't stress this enough. It was against the Raiders, and the Raiders are a bad team, if you haven't seen. They got the Commanders on the road who have fallen apart, and then the New York Giants, who would I think will probably rest their starters. Cowboys, if I check the standings here, they got a 25% chance to make the playoffs. I think the Cowboys could win out and miss the playoffs. Be 10-5-1 because that's how good the NFC is this season. All you have to do is get past the you need help. You need the 49ers to lose for you need the Bears to sweep the Packers. You got to beat the Lions. You need I think the NFC South will be irrelevant to the Cowboys playoff positioning, but it wouldn't hurt if the Panthers lost some games in between. But I think the Cowboys they need to win. They need to win out in order to make the playoffs. And then we go to the final Thanksgiving game, the Ravens losing to in Joe Burrow's return game, 32-14, which will send the AFC North leaders, the Baltimore Ravens, are still after Pittsburgh losing at 6-6. Both the Ravens and Steelers are 6-6. And with the Bengals winning, it opens the door with Joe Burrow back. I think I don't think the Bengals make the playoffs, in my opinion, but they can get past the gauntlet of Buffalo and Baltimore again. You proved that you could beat Baltimore away. Now you have them at home. I think that's going to be telling if they could win both those games. Let's not forget, last year the Bengals were 4-8 at this point of the season. Now, do I think last year they were dead and buried? Then they clawed their way back and had a chance on the last day, but the Chiefs sat their starters in their game against the Broncos, which basically gave Denver that playoff spot, and the Chiefs sabotaged the Bengals in their way. But there's a chance. This season's weaker for the AFC in terms of the wild card picture. You got several teams behind them. You got to hope some slip up, like the Texans or the Bills or the Colts, who are collapsing at the moment with a tough schedule. It's going to be interesting down the stretch these last few months of the season. And for the Ravens, all they have to do is just win. Just beat the teams that you should beat. You got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. Uh, those are winnable games. And then New England at home. I think that's going to be a tough game for them before going on the road to Green Bay and going on the road to Pittsburgh. In my opinion, you got to win the next three games if you want to solidify yourself in the playoffs if you're the Ravens. And so let's go to our other headlines now. The Denver Broncos, they beat the Commanders in overtime as Washington tried to go for the 2-point conversion to win. They didn't make it and lost in a close game by a score of 27 to 26. And shout out to I forgot who it was on Washington that made that incredible catch. Let me pull it up here. It was Traylon Burks went up for that one-handed uh, touchdown grab over the defender, which in my opinion that rivals OBJ's catch from 2014. I'm not saying that's better; it rivals it. On a day where we're seeing incredible touchdown catches, and then Kentucky fires head coach Mark Stoops after 13 seasons. Another bad season for the Wildcats, where they got shut out in their rivalry game against Louisville. And then a couple group of five coaches go into the SEC. Alex Golish from USF is going to Auburn to be their head coach, and the Gators hire Tulane's head coach, John Summerall, as they go for their second Louisiana group of five coach in in a row. And then Michigan State fired their head coach after 2 seasons. They now target former Northwestern coach Pat Fitzgerald, who had some success with the Wildcats during his time there. So now let's get into our final segment, our Monday night preview. And this week it takes us to Foxborough as the one seed of the AFC, or right now the two seed, but could be the one seed after this week. The New England Patriots, they're playing host to the already eliminated New York Giants, the first team that was eliminated from the playoff picture. Now this game doesn't mean anything for the Giants, obviously, since they're 2-10 already out of it. But the Patriots, you can't slip up. You got your bye week next week before playing the Buffalo Bills. And you're already first place in the AFC. So you got to take care of business tonight and then go into your bye week, prepare for Buffalo at home. You beat them once on the road, you can beat them again at home to pretty much seal the division. If you lose this game, it opens the door for Buffalo. It puts it in a 1.5 game lead. Then Buffalo, they play Cincinnati at home next week. If Buffalo takes care of business there, you're within a game when you play each other. If you lose tonight, the Patriots need to win this game in order to keep that to keep the gap wide between them and the Bills. So if I did a score prediction, uh, I would say the Patriots win this one like 31-14. I think it will be that competitive. And that's going to do it for today. Don't forget to join our bracket challenges. The college volleyball bracket is out. Like I said, we'll lock at 10 a.m. Eastern. So link to those are in the description is along with our college football challenges, Bowl Mania, college football bracket. We'll be back here on Friday. So don't forget to tune into that. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again later.